Oops. And you can use this too. Whichever one.
Okay, we probably should go ahead.
Okay.
So people will dwindle in a bit. And there are a couple of people who leave at 9 because they go to do their observation of the IRB process. So good morning. So this morning we're lucky to have Molly Wasco as our presenter. Dr. Wasco is a faculty member in the Collette School of Business here at UAB. When I first met her, she was the chair of a department whose name I could never remember. It's Business Management, Information Systems, and Quantitative Methods, which I don't quite understand how they all go together, but that shows my limited appreciation of the business world, I'm sure. But she's here today because, well, I should mention she recently took a new position as the Associate Dean in the Business School for Faculty Success, Research and Innovation. And so she's very interested in career development for faculty. She's particularly interested in how people present themselves to the world, make sure that they're focusing on things that the consumer wants. So in our case, the consumer is all kinds of people you may not be thinking about. So that's one of the things she'll challenge you with today. For me, she's really helped me to think in terms of how I want to present myself to granting agencies and be really deliberate about that. But she's also really interested in the whole process of innovation in science and biomedicine and how we, if we think we have, I won't say too much, but if you think you have a great idea, how you make sure that the people you're going to try to market your idea to also think it's a great idea and you get aligned with them. So one of the things she's going to talk about today is a new program. It's not that new, I guess, several years old. That's was started through the NSF called I-Corps, and it's something that she engages people with on our campus, and you may be interested in trying it out at some time in the future. So it's good advertising time. But Molly's also part of the executive committee of the CCTS, so she's totally engaged in the CCTS programs and really enriches our community a lot. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Let me so I know Dr. Wasco would like to have people who are accessing online be able to participate. So if you want to unmute yourself so you can spontaneously chime in, we can try that, and if we run into trouble with too much noise, we'll let you know and ask you to mute again. But if she encourages you to unmute and participate, you'll be missing out if you don't do so.
So thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Molly Wasco, and as David mentioned, I'm co-director of a program we have here at UAB called I-Corps. I'd also like to introduce Nikki Millsap. He is also my co-director. And the purpose of I-Corps is how to help translate our scientific ideas or academic discoveries to the next level. So translational science really is about how do we get knowledge and ideas to actually move across a boundary. And it's actually really, really tricky. So knowledge has this property called sticky. It's really good at sticking right in the place where it was discovered. But in order to create an innovation, some new idea, you've got to get that knowledge to unstick from its local context and move across some type of barrier or boundary. And so one of the things I like looking at is how do we get our ideas that we discovered here on campus and actually move them out of your lab and into the community, which is really, really difficult. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. What is the process for actually translating your ideas from your lab out into the community and having a real world impact? So for today, I'm going to talk about why you should care about bioinnovation and why you should care about I-Corps. I want to talk a little bit about how I-Corps supports translational science. How do you actually move a discovery into the community? And then I want to talk a little bit about the opportunities that are available to you. So as David mentioned, I-Corps is a program that was developed around 5 years ago by NSF. So NSF is a granting agency, and of course, like all our federal agencies, they have to go to Congress and talk about why they should invest in their agency, why you should invest in academic research. And of course, what do our Congress folks say? Tell me what you've done with the money. So how has the $7 billion we give you every single year actually had an economic impact in my community? And so NSF came back and said, well, let's take a look at that. And what they discovered is that they don't have a really good program for helping these academic discoveries that they invest in on campus and moving them into some type of commercializable venture, actually getting them out into the community. So they partnered with Stanford University and a guy named Steve Blank, who had this program for actually, it's a new process for startups essentially. And they said, Steve, we want you to come work with the NSF. We want you to develop a program with us. We want you to help train our scientists to think about, is there commercial potential for their research? And so the purpose behind I-Corps is how do we actually increase the economic impact of the research dollars invested every year? And of course, with NSF, they're pretty big, but what about NIH? A lot bigger. And so NIH is faced with the same problem. So this idea of you are spending $30 billion a year investing in something, what's the return on that investment? How much of that is actually translated into new innovations for the health services, impacts on real human health? The other component of this is that all of our federal agencies actually have to take a portion of those dollars and put them into a program called an SBIR-STTR. This is specifically to invest in companies that are translating academic ideas. About 5% of their budget goes directly to these types of company startups. That is a huge, huge pot of money. So how can we actually help make sure that they can spend that and we are spinning off these companies? All right, so I-Corps is the premier federally funded innovation and commercialization program in the U.S. I-Corps has demonstrated over the past 5 years that it actually really, really works. So the National I-Corps program, run out of NSF, has trained over 800 teams from 192 universities across 44 different states. Of those 800 teams, 320 have gone on to actually create companies around an idea. They've gone on and raised another $83 million. And so 6 new agencies are adopting the program, including NIH through NCATS and the CTSA program. So we are actually working with NIH to develop a program to bring I-Corps specifically to life sciences. All right, so the core of the idea behind I-Corps is this idea of lean startup. That startups are not the same things as small businesses. So our traditional approach towards, teaching entrepreneurship is, create this 40-page business plan that will just take you, through all the different business aspects, entrepreneurial finance, entrepreneurial management, and then somehow that magically just happens for startups. It doesn't work that way. Startups are a completely different type of organization than a business model. What makes them different is organizations, companies, already have something called a business model. They already know who their customer is and how to get their products and services to their customer. With startups, they are still searching for a customer. So this is pre-customer stage. And so the method that they use for that is called lean startup. All right, here's a great example. So here we have researchers from Harvard, MIT, Stanford. They had $50 million for their idea. Were they successful? Oh, come on. All it takes is some really smart people. I toss a lot of money at them. I shake them up, right? Throw them out. Some time goes by, and voila, we have this huge success. No, this is actually really, really difficult. Even when you have super bright people and tons of money, the outcome isn't always certain. And so, this idea, have you guys seen Shark Tank? So this idea of a business plan competition, right, where you go and you pitch your, ideas. that the outcome of that is the judges are trying to pick the winners. What are going to be the winning teams, the winning technologies, and they invest in those. That's the example that I just gave. So they said, these guys are going to be winners, let's give them a lot of money. The purpose of I-Corps isn't to pick the winners, but it's to actually create more winners. So when you look at startup outcomes, the graph looks like this. Strikeouts, super high. They never get off the ground. And, you know, the ones that actually make it into, you know, startup companies that actually go on and create lots of commercial advantage, very, very low. So what we're trying to do with I-Corps is actually shift this curve a little bit. How can we drop the number of strikeouts? How do we reduce the risk of an idea at this very early stage? And so we have much fewer strikeouts. And then how do we raise this part of the curve to actually get more base hits and home runs? So that's where I-Corps is trying to make a difference. Can we just shift this curve down to make sure we don't have strikeouts, and then actually build it up a little so that slope isn't so, you know, downward sloping, slanted, to actually have more successful outcomes. All right, so why do these companies fail? Why do you think startups fail? Stupid people? Well, no, not with the other example. Not enough funds? The number one reason startups fail is because they're building a bunch of stuff that nobody wants. So when you spend all of your time in the lab looking inward at your science, are you building something that somebody in the community actually wants and needs? So we want to try and start with this at the very beginning. Are we actually spending our time solving problems that will have real impact for people? All right. So this is a movie slide. What's the movie? Do you know? Field of Dreams. And what's the theme in Field of Dreams?
You build it, they will come.
If you build it, they will come. So how many of you guys have ever said, well, if I just had more pilot money so I could build a better prototype, I need $100,000 so I can build it. And I know once I build it, they will come. All right, this is the mindset we're trying to shift. Before you build anything, make sure you know exactly who has the problem and how you're trying to solve it. So we're trying to shift the mindset. Don't take $100,000, build a prototype, and then show the world. Actually sketch it on the back of an envelope, show it to somebody, get quick feedback, so this idea of fast iteration with very cheap prototypes. So why do I want you to show somebody the back of an envelope instead of a $100,000 prototype? How much do you have invested in a $100,000 prototype? It's you. It's like your baby. After you spend that much time and effort building something, can you imagine 2 years, $100,000, and you present your baby to the world, and your customer says your baby's fat and ugly and not developing very well? I don't want your baby. How are you going to feel? You're going to go home, pull the covers over your head, and just stay in bed for 3 days. It is devastating. And then you're going to go into denial. Well, that customer was stupid, right? They don't know what they're talking about. They're not smart enough to understand my idea. All right, so you get so invested. When you think about the problems you're trying to solve, are they your problems? No, they're somebody else's. So you cannot fall in love with your baby. You are successful when somebody else wants your baby. And so what we're trying to do is get you to fast prototype, get feedback, so you're not so invested, because it feels so cruel. How many of you guys have had a paper come back with a review or a grant review? It's like, boy, this person should just quit graduate school. It's hard, but they're talking about the paper. The paper isn't you. The grant isn't you. It's that idea or that form of the idea. So if you can separate yourself personally from the ideas, the discoveries you're making, and be objective about it, you're going to go a long way. But if you build it, they will come doesn't work. Scientists, we work on problems that are important to us. And so we're creating solutions to problems that people don't really care about. And that's what they discovered at NSF. So they brought Stanford in and they said, here's our portfolio. Look at all these great ideas. And an entrepreneur takes a look at it and said, I can't sell any of this stuff. So we fall in love with our own problems. And we need to rethink that. What are the community's problems? So basically, what we're trying to do with I-Corps is help scientists think about, are they working on problems that are important to the customer? If you want to translate your idea out of the lab, who in the next step cares about what you're doing, and how do you make it easy for them to pick up on what your discovery is going to be? All right, so the CTSA program, our CCTS, NIH is making tremendous investments to make sure we are doing science right. So when you look at the different components of the CCTS, it's all around making sure we have the best tools, methodologies, process to facilitate great science. So are we doing science right? So biostatistics, workforce development and training. We have panels where you can actually get your science reviewed. We work with research administration. We have this network of resources to make sure we are doing science the right way. I-Corps is actually answering a completely different question. Are we doing the right science? And we need to be able to do both. We need to make sure we're working on problems that will have impact, and we need to make sure that we're doing that well. So it's a nice compliment. All right, so here's a bunch of computer programmers. I love these guys, sitting in their closet with their pizza and their Coke. One says, if I were our teenage girl target, I would love our new product. Have you actually talked to any to make sure? What? And leave this room? So they're designing for a community that they've never even talked to. But they're sure it's going to be a huge hit. All right, you guys are already experts in your technology, in your science. And I'm using technology very generically. It can be a solution, it can be a discovery. So substitute technology with your ideas. All right, the biggest unknown to you is the customer. So how do we help you become an expert in the customer? And then I'm using customer very loosely here as well. So customer can be a physician, it can be a patient, it can be a hospital's administrator. So there are different types of customers. We're just using that generic term. How do you become an expert in the customer? All right. Are there any customers in your lab? Are you going to become an expert in your customer by spending more time in your lab?
It depends.
Okay. How does it depend?
So if I'm working on patients and processes, and I'm a patient myself, or my colleagues are patients, but I think the point that you're trying to make is that it needs to be more than just the people in the lab. I don't do bench science, so that's why I'm thinking, because it looks like this is referring to bench science.
So yes, looking inward, you're not going to become an expert in your customer. So exactly what you said, the only way to become an expert in your customer is to get out of the building. Actually go talk to people. And so this is Steve Blank. He's the one that developed the I-Corps program from Stanford. And his idea, his bright idea, is now we have to do experiments with real customers to actually become an expert in the customer. So his great innovation is how do you actually take the scientific method to learn about customer. So right now, you have a bunch of guesses. you have guesses about why you think your science matters and to whom. But until you actually go test that hypothesis, that guess, with real customers, collect data, it's just a guess. All right, so the first step is just answering these two simple questions. What value are you delivering and for whom? And so notice the word here is value. Why do people care about what you're doing? That's not a list of features. That's what you're doing. But you want to be able to really state, all right, what's the value you're delivering and for whom? So look at these folks. That's a very specific customer segment, isn't it? Do you think the value you're delivering will satisfy them and satisfy me? Maybe not, because we have probably different values based on our age, based on where we live. I'm urban, they're rural. So think about the value you're delivering and for whom. So this is what we call a value proposition. What value are you creating? Plus a customer segment, for whom, and then we call this product market fit. That's what you're going for, being able to state these two things. Another thing about I-Core, which is really, really helpful, it helps you guys build a language, a vocabulary, so when you're in the lab talking to each other and somebody says, well, what's the value proposition and what's the customer segment, you know exactly what they're talking about. Do we have product market fit for our ideas? All right, so what value are you creating and for whom? So here's a cool technology. What's the value that this technology creates? Do you guys know what this is? It's an MRI machine. So an engineer named Doug Beets developed this beautiful machine. Look how beautiful it is. What's the value of this machine?
Not to values.
And who cares? So why is that important?
Both the patient and physician care because they provide information about the patients.
And why do patients care about information?
Because it will help the physician to make decision to the treatment and the diagnosis and everything else.
Okay, so this is a machine that will deliver better health outcomes. And people really worry about making sure we've got good health outcomes. Okay? And so for whom? You talked about two different people. Is this designed for the doctor? Is this designed for the patient?
For both.
For both. And they both want the same value. So the doctor probably wants the ability to do his job better, his or her. So deliver a better diagnostic. The patient wants a better health outcome. All right.
Not sure what you said there.
I knew what you said.
It was somebody online?
That was my fault.
Oh,
Apologies. I was trying to turn it on.
all right. What's this machine?
For a kid? Yes.
Same machine. So Doug Beets loves his machine, right? Spent years with GE trying to design and deliver the best MRI machine possible. And what he came up with was the version you saw last. So Doug, being the great engineer that he is, actually went into the field to watch his machine in action so he could pat himself on the back and say, oh my gosh, I'm such a great guy. So he walks in and he's horrified that children are having meltdowns. They're so scared of the machine he's created, they have to sedate the children to get them in there. He is crushed. His baby that he presented to the world is actually a torture machine. Do you think that's what he intended? What if he had never gone to see how patients actually experience his discovery? They would continue sedating children. All right, so with just that information, so who's the customer now? The children, the parents. Same outcome for the doctor. Actually, it's a lot easier for the doctor because they don't have these little children freaking out all over. That takes them 2 hours to stick into the machine. So just a little tweak, understanding for whom you're designing a solution for makes a tremendous amount of difference. All right, so we're going to do an exercise. I have this awesome technology, and I know it's perfect because I've spent $50 million developing it in my lab looking inwards. It's called Autopilot. All you have to do is stick this into your car power source, stick the other end into your phone, and it becomes a self-driving car. You just put in wherever you want to go on the phone, and your car takes you there. Okay? All right, so I've got this great technology, but who is my customer, and why do they care? So take about 5 minutes and come up with this value proposition customer segment. You can work with the person next to you. Folks online, you can use the chat. So Steve, the technology actually isn't for charging electronics, it's for turning your car into a self-driving car. You guys ready? All right, what'd you come up with?
So I said general population. So you kind of segment that out. But they care because they want to spend time more efficiently, if they want to work or sleep while they're driving. Or they may not be able to drive somewhere safely.
All right, so different customer segments, right? So general population, very, very broad. The general population is not going to have the same value proposition as, different segments of it. All right, so who do you think wants to travel more efficiently?
People who need the time to work.
All right, so commuters.
Yeah, commuters.
Value time savings. So I can do my email in the car without worrying about traffic. Very good. So what did you come up with?
Drunk drivers who want to travel, go to dinner and have drinks, or go out to a show and go home safely.
Okay, so people who want to go party and want to get home safely. So people, value proposition, safety, and then the customer segment, people who want to go out, and not need a designated driver. Nikki, what did you come up with?
I said the elderly who aren't able to drive anymore want it because it'll help them regain their independence.
All right, so the value is independence. The specific segment, drivers, elderly drivers who don't feel comfortable with their capabilities.
Disabled people who do not have arm and then they cannot control the steer and then they can use the voice to order the car.
And why do they care?
Because they do not have arms, so they cannot drive the car, but they can use the voice. So the care is that they can use the car to make the life more convenient.
So the value is convenience, or mobility maybe.
Yeah.
So the value is mobility, increased independence, increased freedom for people who have disabilities and can't drive, okay?
We also said, in some range, everybody could benefit, but specifically, we said, safety issues.
So
Prevent
Safety?
accidents, right, and also if you're impaired.
is there a specific customer segment? We can say people with epilepsy. They can't.
There you go,
Yeah,
yes.
we're optometrists,
Yes, there
so-
you go.
Okay.
With-
They
Yeah,
can't
medical
drive for
reasons, so they
6
can't
months.
drive.
After each seizure, so.
So
Okay.
value and safety, mobility, what'd you get?
Well, I guess there's some things that should be answered, but if the value proposition could be improved safety, accuracy of travel, I think a lot of people can benefit. I mean, commuters can benefit, employers can benefit if people come to work more often, have less accidents, car companies can benefit.
So this is interesting. Here you have two different segments, employers that want their employees to get to work versus the actual user. So when you think about it, who's going to pay for it in that model? So would an employer pay and then the driver actually be the beneficiary? So this is why connecting these values and then breaking out your customer segment is so important. It's essential in health sciences because you're going to have so many of these different customer types. And you have to be able to state which one specifically. So the more concrete you can get about the customer segments and their role and how they're going to interact with your technology, then the better you're going to understand this customer base. All right, so what did you get?
So, well, I guess that would, originally I had like one specific example, but with all that's been said, I would say that everyone is a customer.
Okay, narrow it.
Well, because basically, yeah, we can target by.
Who's going to benefit the most? If you have to, remember, your idea is how can I quickly get my discovery into an impact in the community? So if you can find the person who is desperate and loves what you're doing and can't wait to get it in their hands, that's where you want to start. It doesn't mean you have to ignore everybody else, but what's the place you want to start? Who's in enough pain?
I would say mostly disability people.
All right, so people who can't drive, value independence. Good.
So I came up with urban commuters in bumper traffic,
Mm-hmm.
and this would give them a hands-free device to do it.
Yes. So commuters, value, time savings. What'd you get?
I had what's already been said, I had handicapped people and busy people.
And the value for the handicapped, the independence, and busy people?
Is time efficiency.
Time efficiency. Did I get everybody?
No.
David, what did we say online? Oh, you were doing it?
Sure.
Share.
So I'm going to get, this isn't a good one, I don't think, probably, but I said auto insurers because it would reduce their cost of claims if it works well. And I don't think they would buy them directly, but if you could convince an auto insurer that this was something that would ultimately save them money, they could offer their customers a discount for having a sort of safe driver discount.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so I'm not
Another one,
sure how,
military,
why the military?
because somebody could be,
So the military is an organization.
so
So
I was thinking of tanks or something like that where,
tanks are things. What are people?
so
Generals.
Decision makers.
Okay.
Or you could also, if they were driving a car that was self-propelled, then they could be
that's what I.
watching for the enemy, as opposed to pay attention to the goal.
So once again, you guys are drilling into something really critical, that the decision maker that may purchase this may not be the ultimate end user. And they may have different values. So the value for the general is what? Increased efficiency. The value for the people in the tank is safety. You bet. Absolutely. So you guys did a great job. This is actually really hard to do. Can you see the difference between a value and a feature? So, when you think about a technology, let me see if I have one in here. Okay, what kind of technology is this? Oh, come on. This is not a trick question. It is a pen. All right. So, what features does my pen have? Okay, it's got the button. What else does it have? It's got ink. It's black ink. That's another feature.
It's got a little holder.
It's got the holder. That's another feature. It is a ballpoint, so I have got this smooth black ballpoint.
It's green.
It's green. What does it have on it?
UAV.
UAV. It's marketing. Absolutely. These are the features. Why do I care?
Well, you want it retractable so it doesn't spill out on your.
I don't care about that. You know what I love, though? Why I care? It's fun. You guys ever do this? This is awesome. For some reason, I am convinced that's what this is designed for. So for fidgety people, you just play. So why do I care? It's fun. So why else do I care?
Could have been free.
So just a hint here, you won't stay in business very long when you give it away for free. Probably productivity, memory. So being able to get things done. It may be marketing. So I may value this because, it helps my identity, share my identity with other people. So when you think about, there's a big difference between a value and a feature. And what we typically see with scientists is they just start thinking immediately about features. Oh, I have this cool technology. I'm just going to add, this retractable bench. I'm just going to add this other little widget. I'm just going to add this widget. And everybody's going to love it. So whenever you start thinking about this, come back to why. Another core component of this is something called an MVP, a minimum viable product. What is the one thing that a customer segment values most about what you're doing? And start there. Does it mean you don't get to add features later? No, but let's just get to a starting point. And so that's going to be, who's in enough pain? Are you creating gain? Oh, this is a great one. Leisure. Who values leisure? Well, I don't know. It's been so long since I've had any.
I think you value a lot.
How many of you guys have kids? All right. So for me, I could stick this in the car and I could say, take that kid to soccer practice and bring him home. So I have actually an hour of leisure. Because what am I going to do for an hour sitting around the soccer field? Is it leisure for me? Ugh. I'll try, shop, and then I pick up a kid late. So very good. Good one.
Technology is not working.
Yes, and why do I care? Now I'm not mobile. All right, so what value are you creating and for who? Where's your technology in that sentence? Did you guys ever say autopilot? Where's the technology? But what about my technology, right? That's what you want to talk about, isn't it? Well, here's the thing. Quit talking about your technology because nobody cares. Take your technology, stick it in a box, and lock the box. Just come up with these two things, the value proposition and the customer segment. Don't talk about your technology. All right, so the number one myth. Customers care about your technology. They don't care. They care about a few things. They want to get their jobs done. So is your technology going to help them be better at their jobs? They want their problems addressed, hopefully to go away. They want their pain killed and their dreams achieved. These are basically the 4 buckets that people value. So what are you delivering in terms of that type of value proposition? Are you helping them get jobs done, taking their problems away, killing their pain, or making them happy? All right, customer types. So you guys were getting at this with the exercise that we did. That customer segment can be broken down into many different types. So there could be a beneficiary of the discovery you're creating. So remember the patient, when you think about the patient as a beneficiary, your solution could be a very different looking MRI machine. So thinking about that. End user. The other thing about patients, do they get to pick what solution is presented to them? Not very often. Who gets to pick how you're going to solve a patient's problem?
Doctors.
A doctor? You bet. And how do doctors select things?
I would readily. I'm just kidding. Okay.
Habits?
Look at the evidence. Habits.
So everybody is solving their problems currently, aren't there? I mean, there is a status quo. Even if it's just I'm living with the pain. So the number one threat to your discovery is that people aren't going to change their habits. So doctors could be really good at the method they're currently using and not want to try something differently. So can patients make them do something different?
Sometimes. Of course.
So actually, the pharmaceutical companies are brilliant at this, aren't they? So you need this pill, go talk to your doctor. So they try and, bypass that whole decision-making stream and bring it back. All right, so you have decision makers. What kind of equipment is actually in a hospital and available to a doctor? Who makes the decision to make that purchase in the first place? Administrators, and what are they thinking about? What value are they worried about? Right? The sustainability. So balancing sustainability with health outcomes. Insurance.
How's the insurance pay this?
You bet. Oh, we'll just give it away for free. So somebody's going to pay. There's an influencer in there. So the doctor may have some influence on the health system to be able to purchase something. There could be recommenders. So if we have some type of agency, so, the American Cancer Society, they have an influence over what we call standard of care. Saboteur, what's that? People who have a vested interest and don't want to see your technology used. So if you think about this, say you have a cure that will make a disease go away. Well, who's providing care for that disease currently? All right, the pathologists, the doctors, that get insurance for this procedure. And so do you think they're going to care if it's cured? What happens to their jobs? All right, so what do you think they're going to do about your technology? It's crappy science, it's bump this, it's, think about it. Are there customer segments, customer types in your ecosystem that want to see you fail? Good. All right, so now I want to hear about what you're doing. So you can either do it for yourself with an own discovery that you're working on or do it with people sitting around you. But I want to hear about what you're doing. So who is your customer for your discovery and why do they care? Go. Take 5 minutes. Write it down. Yeah. You guys ready? All right, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay.
You're nodding. Don't nod. Otherwise you get called on.
Should I talk about the technology?
No! Put it in the box. Lock the box.
Okay, lock the box.
My customers are hospital administrators and surgical teams.
Okay, so that's two different types.
It's just surgical, okay, we have two different types, two different segments.
So pick one.
Hospital administrators.
Okay.
The reason they care is because they are penalized for healthcare associated infections.
And why do they care about that?
Because they lose money.
And why do they care about that?
They don't want to lose money.
Why do they not want to lose money?
They want to make profit.
So this is the hard part. I mean, to get to a value, you start with a feature, but you have to keep drilling down with why. Keep asking why that's important. Why is profitability important? Sustainability. So the ability to actually achieve their mission, which is community health, that are outcomes for their health, their communities. Good. So this is actually kind of the style of the teaching approach in I-Corps. So most of the presenting is done by you guys, talking about what you've learned, but the teaching team isn't passive sitting in the back. So it's kind of like coaching. Have you guys, seen coaches on the sideline actually kind of talking you through it and what's your play and help you drill in? So that's it's a very interactive, very direct feedback methodology. And it's interesting. It takes a little while to get used to because you guys are so, used to getting to present for 15 minutes without interruption. It's just a different style, and it's just to get you thinking through and drilling down a little bit deeper. So how to actually apply the process. All right, so what did you get?
So our customer is the Department of Defense.
Okay, that is a building.
Yeah.
Who in that building cares?
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay.
Depends on what why they care.
Okay, so pick one.
Okay, so we'll say what the head general in the Department of Defense that is over warfighting.
So, okay, so a decision maker that is on the front line.
Sure.
Okay.
And why do they care? To create better warfighters, to be more efficient, bigger, faster, stronger, better safety. So that's why they care.
All right, so be careful with being so broad. You have to start somewhere. So, try not to think about buildings as customers or everybody as customers. Can you drill it down? Who is in the most pain or has the most to gain from your solution? And what is that value proposition to them? So if you are like everything to everybody, then there's no place to start. So this idea, what do they value the most?
Lives.
Saving lives. So a decision maker who has to send troops out to do battle, they are interested in saving lives. That's why they care. All right, tell them. Who are your customers and why do they care?
So my customers, the ones who I wish cared, are so far removed from anything I can do. So so I think the customers who ultimately will care are people with asthma, but they don't know that I exist. So I guess the immediate customer is the editors of the journals I publish in, and they care because they want to sell their journals, and they think that my article will help them sell their journal.
So that's interesting. Your customer is a journal. And they care because they want to sell more journals?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll work on that. So, but who cares about the science you're doing?
The readers of the journal.
Who are they?
The other scientists who are trying to learn about how asthma what mechanisms of asthma are.
Okay, so other research scientists, and they value it because it will help advance their science. Good.
My potential customer is the patients who have already heart disease or maybe at risk to develop disease. And then why do they care? Because what means that my service to them will help them to maybe to prevent heart disease development or maybe help them to improve their long-term outcome even they have the heart disease. That's why they care.
Okay, so I heard two different things. People with heart disease and people who want to prevent heart disease.
Yes.
So which will you focus on first?
Actually, of course, I will primarily focus on the who do not have heart disease at this moment because it's better to prevent than cure.
Okay, so why do I care?
You care because if you have heart disease, the first thing is that you need to pay a lot of money to the treatment. And then another thing is that if you have heart disease, it will maybe make your life qualities decrease and something like that.
You know, this is such a fascinating problem to me because how do we get people to change their behavior? You know, this is a great place to actually study this. So do I care more about that piece of pizza and the ice cream cone or your solution? So why do I care, and do I care enough to actually be able to implement it? So very interesting. Mickey, what do you have? Nothing?
I'm not doing any science. No.
So my customers are patients with chemorefractory leukemia,
Okay.
and they care because the status quo is hospice and death, so they want to live longer.
So are they actually your customers, or are they the doctors that care for them?
So, I mean, I guess the doctors and the insurance companies could also be customers, but I think the one with the most direct, I guess, is the patient.
So this is going to be fascinating. This is what the I-Corps program helps you guys actually work through. So who is going to pay for your solution? Who influences their decision making? Who actually gets this service, the user, and who's the end beneficiary? And really understanding that, because remember, you're an expert in the science. Can you now become an expert in the customer and knowing how that ecosystem works? So what do you have?
So my customer is patients with epilepsy who complain of memory loss, and they care because it can keep them working longer, it can improve their quality of life, they can feel more independent if their memory were better. The list goes on and on.
So dreams achieved. Good.
Okay, I have several customers.
Pick one.
Pick one. Okay, football players.
Okay.
So the goal is to reduce the long-term and short-term effects of concussion on their health.
And why do they care?
Because they don't want to end up with dementia.
Okay, so you're making their pain go away.
Correct.
Good.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say my customer most directly would be patients with cancer who have brain metastases.
Okay.
I think the value would be improved quality of life and the need for less treatments.
Okay, so you're making their pain go away. Good.
Basically the same technology. Yes, I would say generally speaking on, let's say cancer patients overall, and why do they care? Because, I mean, they want to get cured, they want a better life, and possibly live without pain.
Okay, so what if I flip this on you and said, all right, now pick the doctor.
Pick the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by pick the doctor?
So as your customer, my customer is a doctor, and why does he or she care?
Well, I would think that it would go by the same line, even though he is a doctor. It's the main goal of getting treated.
So saving the patient.
Yes.
Okay.
So my customers would be young adults with a diagnosis of schizophrenia on antipsychotics. And the reason they care is because they gained a lot of weight. And
why do they care about that?
so different people have different reasons. For some it could be self-esteem, for some it could be insulin-resistant diabetes mellitus, for some it could be more morbidity and inability to enjoy the life like they used to.
Okay. So two really important values, self-esteem and enjoy life better. Okay, don't underestimate the value of joy. So how many of you guys have an iPhone? Do you know why? Is it the best technology? Is it the cheapest technology? Does it have the best features?
No.
No, so the value proposition Apple delivers is this aspect of joy and self-esteem, right? So this, oh, well, I've got the little sticker. You know, you can actually get a phone that has probably everything that you use it for about 20 bucks. But it doesn't have the cool Apple. All right, so what did you come up with?
So I came up with like 10 different customers, and I didn't finish. There's more.
So we call that an ecosystem map, and it's a really effective tool.
But if I were to pick one, I would start with patients at the end of life. And the value there is to increase health outcomes. So this is for palliative care. I guess that's the technology. So decrease suffering, improve health outcomes, improve quality of life, and potentially survival.
Oh, good. So the happiness and make my pain go away. All right. So believe it or not, teachers never do the things they talk about in class. So while you guys were doing it, I actually sat down and started thinking about the research I do and who's my customer and why do they care. Like, I can't believe I've never done this before. I'm like David, I was just like, I just need a journal to care and publish it, please. All right, academic researchers care about my discovery because they want to see their science have an impact. So they want to see their dreams achieved. Or because they want to do better science, which is to get their jobs done, remove some of their pain. Or they want to be more successful. So what do I have right now? I have a list of 3 guesses. So why did, and for me, it's how do we get people to come to something like this? And then how do we actually get them to change their mindset, their behavior? And that's the kind of research that I do. And so hopefully, if my discovery goes anywhere. But do I know what you guys care about? Have I asked you? No, I just have a list of guesses. That's what we have right now, is a list of guesses.
So I have a question. It seems like we can have lots of different customers.
Mm-hmm.
And what if serving the customer isn't best for business? Do we shift the customer?
So, it's a good question. When you look about sustainability and how are you going to have an impact in the community, how will your discoveries have an impact? Business is not a bad word because you have to be able to generate some type of financial return to sustain what you want to do. So most of us, that financial return is just, I have to get that next grant. I have to keep that funding line. But even though that's not a for-profit endeavor, guess what? If you spun out a discovery, you have another revenue stream coming in. And you're not just dependent on the grant, and you can keep your lab going. There are multiple ways to actually try and generate these revenue streams. You can do good and do well. But if you want a sustainable financial model, a business, then the strategy is who is going to pay me the quickest? And how do I get that in? And then how do I grow my next customer? And then how do I grow my next customer? So what is the fastest path to revenue? And so, that's what we think about is, can you get the revenue model coming in to be able to sustain what you want to do? And the best way to do that is to make sure you're solving a problem that actually somebody really cares about out in the community. All right, so here are the 3 pillars of iCore. The main tool we use in this program is something called the Business Model Canvas. And one of the nice things about the Business Model Canvas, it's a one-pager where you can write down your guesses, your assumptions. And so instead of asking people to do a 40-page business plan, we're at the early stages where we just have some assumptions and we've got to test those. And so the tool we use is the Business Model Canvas. We go through a process called customer development. So customer discovery, customer development. Startups are startups because they don't have a customer yet. So you're trying to figure out what's a business model that will get me customers. And when you can get that repeatable and scalable, then you move out of startup and you become a company. You do not want to be a startup for very long. You want to have customers. You want to be able to get out of this customer development stage and into actually, building out your customer base. And then the third pillar, and I mentioned this before, is the instructor feedback. It's a very different style of classroom, essentially, where they're coaches and they hold you accountable. So what we do to hold you accountable is if we want you to become an expert in the customer, your homework every week is to go talk to 10 customers. And then come up with a hypothesis, go interview 10 people, test that hypothesis by collecting data, and then come back and share what you've learned. All right, and at the end of this, hopefully we get, self-reflection, self-awareness, and behavioral change. Do we think we're going to turn you all into entrepreneurs? Probably not. But we do hope that you will think differently about the science that you do and the approach that you take. And some of you may really want to be entrepreneurs, which is okay too. All right, so this is the startup process. Right now you have some type of core discovery, core technology. And then what we used to assume, we just, after some time and we throw some money at you, it magically becomes this company. That actually looks like this. The hardest part in this pathway is getting through this customer discovery phase. Who cares and how do I get to them? And so basically what you guys are doing, you're at the very early stages searching for a business model. So you're not in execution. Don't come up with a marketing plan. You're basically trying to figure out who cares and why, and then be able to iterate on that. So this is the tool that I was talking about. It's called the Business Model Canvas. And basically it has 9 boxes. And so what we do, actually what we've been doing, so value proposition, customer segments. Those are 2 of the boxes. And so you're trying to figure out what's the value you create and for whom. But then once you have a good idea about that, you have to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to reach those customers? So what is the channel through which my solution will get to them? And that could be very, very complicated. So some types of things, you can just put up an Amazon store and start immediately selling on the internet. What about health services? How do technologies get into hospitals in the first place? What does that look like? What channels do people use? Which ones do you need to do? Customer relationships. So how do you actually build a relationship with a customer? Is it a one-off, one and done? Or do they expect you to be able to come service? Do you want them to come back? Do you want them to be lifelong customers? And then when you look at this, there has to be a revenue stream associated with your activity. So how is money going to come into this system? Key activities, so the back end, basically, what is your company going to do? And what are the resources that you need to be able to do that? But your company doesn't have to do everything. You can have partnerships. So maybe your key activities are research and development, your key resource is your intellectual property, and your partner is some biotech company that actually provides the supply chain for you for your customer. So you need to think through this. And then how much is all of this going to cost? So basically, you start with what value and to whom. Then you look at, all right, what is this external stuff that needs to happen to reach my customer? And is it sustainable? Then you need to think about, all right, what's the stuff I need to be doing on the internal side of my organization? What is it going to cost? And then here's the magic. Revenue needs to exceed costs, or you're not going to stay in business very long. And so when I've seen teams go through I-Corps, they've got this great idea. They know it's going to work. They get through the canvas, and then they get to this box here, the revenue stream, and what are they dependent on? Healthcare reimbursements. So people are stunned at that revenue stream coming in and how low it is. If your revenue stream is based on reimbursements, before you even start building prototypes, you need to look at what that reimbursement is and is it going to generate enough return? You may have the best idea, but you may not be able to deliver it because there isn't enough revenue in the system to keep your organization going. All right, so talk to customer first. Use hypothesis to search for a sustainable model. So here's the basic process. You come up with a hypothesis. So that's what we did. Basically, when I made you do your products, your product market fit, here's, the value proposition, here's the customer segment. That is a guess. That is a hypothesis. You test that through interviews, collecting data. You assess and analyze the data, and then you adjust or pivot off of that. All right, so back to autopilot. I have a hypothesis. I believe that old people value safety the most. That's my guess. That's one of the guesses we came up with. How do I test that? Right. Can I get it talking to you guys? Can I get it talking to my friends at the pub over dinner? But I love talking about my technology. How do I collect data to test that hypothesis? I don't know any old people. Oh, I can talk to my mom and dad, right? They're old. I can talk to David. All right, so I have a hypothesis that I believe that old people value safety the most. How do I actually ask a question that helps me collect data to test that hypothesis? Well, I can just show them autopilot. And I can say, you value safety, don't you? Yes? Oh, good, check. I can go talk to the next person. No. What you're trying to do is understand from their point of view what they value. So you have to ask a question about the driving experience. Tell me more about that. Why is that important to you? How much is it important to you? What would it take if you could do something differently? How much better, faster, cheaper, more effective would it have to be?
This reminds me a lot of community-based participatory research,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that you've identified the beneficiaries or a segment of the beneficiaries population and working with them. I don't know, unfortunately I have to leave to go to the IRB, so I'm not going to hear the end. But I was just wondering.
That'd be more interesting than the IRB.
But I don't know.
Contract.
Man.
If the process continues just back and forth with development of the technology, where you continue to speak with the customer, or if it's just at the startup phase?
This is the same process.
Okay.
It's, it's called empathy. Empathy with the user. Who are the people you're designing solutions for, and what do they care about? So I care a lot about heart disease. I would love to prevent heart disease. But you know what I really care about? Is I'm hungry and it's convenient. So it's really hard, or what do I care about? My kids. Quit screaming at me. Like, quit whining. Yes, here's pizza. So these types of values and the competing and understanding what's going through your user. How do you make a healthy choice more convenient for them? So it's very interesting. But yes, it's the same thing. And actually, it's a very California-centered, Silicon Valley-centered innovation that has actually, come across to us. So the traditional model has been what? We're experts. Who has all the knowledge? Experts. You're just going to do what I tell you to do, right? Because I'm the expert. No, it starts with understanding the people you're designing for. So very, very similar. So tell me about your experience. All right, so can you guys come up with a hypothesis specifically around the value proposition you created and come up with a couple of questions that you could go ask? And tell me who specifically you're going to go ask. What's your hypothesis? What's your leading question? And who? So when you think about who are you looking up in the phone book to get a phone number to call? My online attendees. Feel free to use the chat box or join us via voice. You guys ready? All right, so I have a hypothesis. Academic researchers want to see their science have impact. All right, who do I need to talk to?
Some research.
Luckily, I know where a few of those are. And what would I ask them?
What type?
Do you want your research to have impact?
Yeah, what type of impact do you want?
So why do you do segments? What's important to you about that? Tell me more. What if I wish, I would like, so, get them open-ended questions and ask them, try and get questions that will help kind of reveal their values. And this is going to be really, really hard because they're going to come back with features. And so you're going to have to keep asking, why is that important to you? Why is that important? What'd you have?
So do I need to say my hypothesis first? Or
Yeah. Hypothesis?
So my hypothesis is that an advanced helmet system will reduce concussion and sequelae going forward for all players.
So your hypothesis is back to, so who's the customer segment, why do they care?
Right, football players prevent injury. I mean, there's a long list of customers, but.
Okay, so your hypothesis that football players are worried about head injury.
Right.
Okay.
And so the first question I would ask is, do you even care about lane safety? Because if they don't care, then the coaches really don't care, although they do.
So broader, why do you play football? What worries you about playing football? How do you deal with that now? How important is that to you? I mean, when you think about it, if that was really important to them, they wouldn't be playing football. I mean, there's a way to eliminate that.
Maybe
So-
they don't know that.
What is in it for them? It'd be a really interesting conversation. So who would you talk to?
You can talk to players, basically.
Okay, so you want grown-ups.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could go down to high school, basically from high school on, probably.
Okay, so people who make their own purchasing decisions about
Right,
themselves.
exactly.
Interesting though, how many different customer segments are there?
There's a ton. I mean,
There's the parents.
parents, coaches, physicians, trainers, team owners,
So, and
they all have different reasons why they should care.
and where do you start? So this is what going through this process will help you tease apart. So yes, they're all customer segments. Which one, understanding the ecosystem, do you start with first? Pretty cool. All right, so what did you come up with? Is he sleeping?
No,
Okay,
sorry.
your turn.
Actually,
I have no idea, sorry.
Okay, we'll pass.
Okay, hypothesis is, I switched a little bit. Aging adults want to live independently.
Okay.
Leading question for the aging adult. You have trouble doing tasks you used to be able to do.
All right, tell me what it's like getting older. What's been different for you in that experience? What frustrates you about that? What are you happy with? So, yes, I'm frustrated. So, trying, that type of question is going to run you into a brick wall pretty quickly. So, try and bring them up to where you can really start this kind of dialogue and conversation. Remember, you're trying to discover things about them. You're not trying to get them to answer your question. Okay.
I really don't know what to ask.
This is why we practice. We practice and we come up with a plan and a set of questions. So when you're out there in the wild, in the world, you're not just blindly doing this.
And the idea of talking to these patients is very scary to me because I'm in a bench. So I guess chemorefractory leukemia patients, they don't really have any treatment options. I mean, how do you ask? I mean, they're basically at the end of life. I have no idea what to ask.
What is it like to be in your shoes? What do you fear? What do you wish could be different? If science could produce something for you, what would you like to see? So lots of interesting questions around that. But yeah, those are very painful conversations. So the other thing about ICOR that we do is we try and send you guys out in teams because it is really hard. And nothing that you have done so far in your careers has prepared you to be able to do this. But if you go with a friend, then it actually kind of helps you. Do you know what this is? Right here? Backbone? Use it. It is hard, but you know what? You will live through it. Your knees will be shaking the first 3 or 4, but then you'll get comfortable with it. And then this will just be a new skill set that you have in your toolbox. This ability to be able to go talk to people. So my hypothesis is that people with epilepsy wish that their memory was better. And my first question would be, aside from seizures, what other aspects have you dealt with in your life that you wish were better? And then if they say memory, would say something like, well, how has it affected kind of your home life? You had issues remembering just household things. Or it's just, how does it affect you, not having memory? And how important is that to you? So on the scale of things that are impacting you right now, where would you rate this one? So good ones.
So yeah, the hypothesis is young adults with schizophrenia would like to experience pleasure just like people with no schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
And the leading question to this young adults with schizophrenia would be, what do you do for fun?
And how does this impact what you do for fun? And how would you, I mean, a lot of good questions around that. If you could do something differently, what would it look like? Good. All right, so talking to people. Our online folks don't want to talk to us. Okay. All right, so applying the scientific method to looking at the types of problems you tackle and understanding the value proposition. Basically, you start with your value proposition and your customer segment. You take that to generate a hypothesis, which is your prediction. You run experiments. So how many do you need? How large is your N? So we're collecting data, right? Collecting data via interviews to test a hypothesis. How many do you need? What if you hear it from one person? Do you have enough data to make a conclusion? What if you hear it from 2 people? What if you hear it from 10 people? What if you hear it from 50 people? When is your N enough? Is 50 better than 1? Yes, because you are seeing a trend in the data that gives you some confidence that instead of a guess, it's probably a fact. You've learned it from your customers. So one of the things we're going to keep pushing you guys on, is this a guess or is this what you actually heard from customers? So the more people you talk to, the more you hear it from, then the better your data collection and the more likely you're accurate in your assumption. All right. Where I see teams really get devastated is they talk to 10 people. One person says, here's a shiny object over here. So you ignore the other 9 because you want to chase after what this one person has said. And so we have you guys actually record the interview so you can go back and you can say, well, okay, this is something I need to explore in the next 10 interviews. But don't change your entire research stream because you heard it from one person. All right, so the information you need to know is somewhere out there in the world. It's not in your lab or your office. Okay, the information you need to know is not searchable on Google. Okay, you can't get your answer by looking at Google. It's not available in an abstract on PubMed. So this is another thing I see quite a bit. The research we do is because we read in an abstract on PubMed that said this is an important problem. Why do we say that in an abstract?
You get your paper published.
Right, who's going to publish something that it's not a big problem? So we actually saw a team And they had already formed a company. They were going through the NIH program. And so they were solving this problem because they read it in PubMed. Everybody kept saying that, oh, we need to have a diagnostic for this disease. We don't have one. It's terrible. 20 million bazillion people in the world are suffering this disease. We have to have a diagnostic. All right? So guess what happens when they actually went and talked to doctors? Did they say, we need a diagnostic? No, it was heartbreaking. They said, you know, we don't need a diagnostic. We give them the pill and it goes away. It could be one of these 4 things. I don't care. And give them the pill, they get better. And so they're like, oh my goodness. So here we've been solving this problem and the doctors don't care. Does it mean their science isn't worthwhile? No. I mean, there could be an application for that, but it just means it's not going to impact the doctors. How do you go back and think about, all right, now, you know, what's the value and who's going to care? Maybe it does mean. So hopefully while they're out there talking to the doctors, they said, well, if that doesn't matter to you, what does? What does cause you the most pain? What would make your job better? And then by getting that kind of direct information, you can change your science. All right, so customer discovery is learning from your customers by actually talking to them, by listening to them. So in these interviews, your job is to listen, not to do the talking yourself, and observe them. So if you can take yourself out to where they are and actually see them in the context of their work, it's very, very powerful. All right. So the goal is to gain insight into the customers. So you're doing something called pattern recognition. You're trying to get enough data to be able to see these types of patterns. Oh, so coming back, can you talk to 100 people? Because that's what it takes to really know that what you're doing is going to have an impact. Can you talk to 100 people? But it's hard to talk to people. It's hard to get access to business professionals. It's really hard to get doctors. It's hard. Just go ahead and fill in the blank. Go ahead and tell me why you can't talk to 100 people. Yeah. It's hard. We agree. So, but, you know, talk to 100 people. How many people is it going to take you if you need customers? More than 100? Oh yeah, a lot more than 100. So everybody you talk to is a potential future customer. You're just building that base and those relationships now. Yes, it's hard. All right, you have to interview people you don't know. Why? But they're not going to talk to you, right? You want to talk to people you know. All right, so here's an old person. Here's Grandma. So what are you doing these days, sweetie? I'm working on a platform that provides intra-building navigation for first responders via predictive analytics through the cloud. Bless your heart. All right, the people you know are going to be nice to you and tell you what you want to hear. These interviews are not only worthless, they're possibly harmful. So only people you don't know are going to tell you the truth. So you have to go talk to people you don't know because the people you do know want to be nice and they want to protect that relationship. So you have to talk to strangers. All right, don't talk to other researchers. So I love this. They don't count. If academic research, the academic research community is your market, oh, well, I'm building a solution for other people just like me. Well, chances are pretty good that's not a big enough market to have a sustainable business. And so can you talk to other people? You know, why do we talk to people like this? Because we're comfortable talking to people like this. All right, in-person interviews are always the best. One-on-one, in-person, preferably where they are. Phone calls, Skype are okay, but only when you must do it that way. So if you're looking at third world doctor solutions, chances are pretty good you're going to have to Skype those guys, that you're not going to be able to get there. All right, focus groups do not count. Email threads do not count. Surveys are garbage. So how many of you guys have said, oh, I'm going to pick on David. We talk a lot about how do we provide better workforce training. Well, we'll just send you a survey, right? And you guys will answer the survey and we'll magically know what's important to you guys. Surveys are garbage. You have to go talk to people. Do not sell. Do not take your technology, stick it in a box. Don't go out there, I'm doing the coolest thing ever. Let me tell you about it. All right, the goal of selling is to change somebody else's opinion. What you're trying to do is figure out what people's opinions are. Very different mindset. All right, ask very open-ended questions. Tell me about yourself. What do you do? How does that work? What problems do you face? Is it a big problem? Why? How much of a hassle? That's interesting. Tell me more. How are you solving this problem now? Lots of good open-ended questions. All right, what you're looking for, big problems that are solved poorly. You want to find people in pain because people usually want to get out of pain, or people who are seeking joy or making their jobs easier, better. All right, look out for surprises and then dig deeper. Always ask why, then why, and why. Why is such a good question. All right, finish every single interview with what else should I have asked and who else should I talk to. So keep in mind when you're talking to people, it's much easier to get access to the next person if you can get an introduction. And hopefully what you're onto is a big problem solved poorly. So the person you're interviewing is going to say, hey, you should talk to this person, I'll give you an introduction. If they're like, then are you solving a big problem? Probably not. What is their big problem? What would they be excited about? You know, if I came in and said, hey, you know, I'm going to take your pain away at work, are you going to be excited about that? You love going to work and being in pain? No, so you want to find these problems that people are excited about talking about, things that people are passionate about. And it's okay. What you want is an extreme. Oh my gosh, this is awful. Or that's not a problem. People in the middle are like, habit. You're going to be competing with habit. All right. So, Richard Feynman, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself. And you are the easiest person to fool. So you are going to go out there, you're going to interview, and you're going to be seeking just the information you want to verify what you already assume. That's what we do in science because we're passionate about our problems and we're looking for confirmation bias. So what we're trying to get you guys to do is be more objective. Your science is separate from you. And really be open to this idea that maybe you're not solving the right problem. It doesn't mean that what you haven't done isn't worth it. It's just maybe it's time to pivot. All right, so what actually is ICOR? So it's currently an NSF program. It's being rolled out by NIH. But the way the structure works is universities, specific universities, are something called ICOR sites. So UAB is an ICOR site. We actually have an NSF grant. We're part of this innovation network specifically to provide this type of training to our researchers here on campus. So students, faculty, you know, the entire ecosystem. So the way we do it here is we have a course called ENT 650. It'll be this fall, and then it's Friday mornings. So we've tried to make it as convenient for people where it doesn't conflict with other things. You have an idea that you really want to take through this entire process, then signing up for the course is a good way to really get out and explore that. All right, there's also a structure. So we have 8 university networks that are called ICOR nodes. These nodes provide regional training. So you can actually, if you want a short course and not take a full-on course. We have a short course coming up at UAB in June. So it's an all-day kickoff. You have 2 weeks in between to go do your interviews, and then we have a finale. So we're going to be hosting that at Edge of Chaos. And then there's something called the I-Core National Program. The nice thing about the national program, that you get a $50,000 stipend if you're accepted into the national program. You'll go to one of the nodes that actually is doing, a program similar to your type of research. So you get to go and see another 25 teams solving very similar types of problems with the national teaching team. And you get $50,000 to actually go do customer discovery. So if you need to go to a third world and interview doctors, you will have money to be able to go do that. So by either coming through our site program through the class or the regional program, that we can recommend you to go up to the national program. So that's the big thing. And then folks who have been through this national program are significantly more likely to get refunded or to be able to move on to an SBIR. All right, so here's a team that actually went through our fall national program. This is a team out of Auburn. And so when they applied, they said they have a diagnostic and therapeutic agent, a so-called theranostic for clinical use as an MRI contrast agent. So, here's Alan. Look at how he describes himself. Structure, property, relationships of nanomaterials, elucidating and controlling the interaction of nanomaterials with biological systems, smart theranostics. What does this say? He loves his technology, doesn't he? Loves it. So, SPION is supraparamagnetic iron oxide nanoparticles. What is that? And why do I care? So, this is where they started. They came through the I-Core South Regional Program over at Georgia Tech. And then, the exercises we did today, this is where they started. Small, consistent-sized molecules are best. So that was basically their first stab at trying to say, who's my customer, why do they care? So they have a guess that something about, creating a contrast agent that is more consistently sized is going to be better. All right, version 2. MRI centers want agents with high quality results. That's pretty good. All right, who's the customer? What's an MRI center? Is it a customer? It's a building. All right, so we got to work on that. But they have, high quality results. So kind of getting at that value. Where they ended up, so they went out and talked to 30 radiologists. So they determined the person in the MRI center is the one that really cares about this problem. And do you think they cared about high quality results? They didn't care. So the results were a quality that was good enough. What the radiologist really cared about was the safety for the patient. So apparently when you inject people with this stuff, it's nasty stuff. And so they thought quality is good enough. We're actually trying to minimize the amount we have to use because, we don't worry about the safety for the patient. So they ended up, radiologists will buy imaging agents that are safer for patients. Do you think that has an impact on the research these guys are going to do? Actually, it was fascinating. So, we wanted this team to go on to the national program, and they're like, but we have a technology that doesn't work. But Alan said, you know what, I was working on that problem 2 years ago. And so I do have a technology that I've started that actually gets to safer. And he's going to switch his research string to go to really solve this problem with safety. So very interesting experience. All right, was it painful? You had to go talk to people, right? Oh my gosh, where am I going to find people? Well, you know what? We have lots of radiologists. So this is where the CCTS can really help facilitate. You want to talk to people in health systems? We can help you. Not only do we have them here, but the CTSA network has 65 other universities just like us where we can help you go talk to people. So how many years are you going to spend on a research grant? 3, 5, 10? Don't you want, he found out, his team found out in 6 weeks that they were solving the wrong problem. Is it worth going through that? To make sure, to get verification that the research that you're doing is going to have impact? Sure. All right, so here's just details on the program. So the kickoff is June 6th over at the Age of Chaos. During the 2 weeks, you'll go do interviews, and then you'll just have check-ins with somebody on the instructor team, and then we'll have a face-to-face finale. The expectation is you'll talk to 30 people. All right, another option is to take the ENT 650 course this fall. The nice thing about this is every team that comes through the class actually gets a $2,500 stipend to help them go do this customer discovery. So do you need to go to a conference where a bunch of radiologists hang out? Well, we'll have some funds to be able to help support you to do that. All right, so just summary, the business model canvas. Right now we have a bunch of guesses about how things work. You collect data by actually getting out of the building and talking to people. And then what you want is to be able to fill this in with things that are pretty close to facts. All right, so just some themes from working with some of these SBIR and NIH teams. And these are already companies that have gone through the program.
It's possible some people don't know what SBIR is.
Small Business Investment Research Grants. So these are academic research ideas that have gotten funding from NIH to start a company to try and move that technology forward. All right, so I just need 3-letter agency approval. That's my customer. I just need, my customer's the agency, I just need them to approve it. Actually, that's not. That is a key activity you need to accomplish, which is another box on your canvas. If you're going to go through that kind of pain, don't you want to make sure that you actually have a customer that will buy it after you do this? All right, way too complicated about how the teams talk, that we get so good talking science and writing those abstracts, we forget how to actually talk so your grandmother can understand you. So we're 3 weeks into this program, and we still can't get them to articulate who's your customer, why do they care? All right, I love this one. The people I interviewed loved it. What does that mean? Does that mean they went out and interviewed people to understand about them? How did people know what it is unless they went out there and sold it? Right? How did they know? You were selling. So get back to why do they love it? What is it about it that makes them do something? All right, that's the dark side. So business people are the dark side. Making money from my research is the dark side. Actually, it's not. These things coexist. This is what brings your research to the light of day. And even if you want to stay in science, it's going to make you a much better grant writer because you will be able to demonstrate the impact. And you'll be able to say, I know this is going to have impact, not because I read it in PubMed, it's because I talked to 100 patients or doctors. All right, it's really hard to get interviews. Yes, we'll bring Kleenex so you can whine about how hard it is to get interviews. But you guys do lots of hard stuff every single day. Doing science is hard. It is really hard. But don't you want to know if your science is going to actually work? All right, so why would you want to go through the program? Makes you a better scientist, number 1. Helps you write more compelling grants and get published, number 2. Increases your chances of doing science that's really going to make a difference. And this is what I firmly believe, that this is how we should be generating or teaching the next generation of scientists. So all of you guys coming through that are going to replace all of your professors now, I think we should be thinking differently about our scientific approach. All right, thank you guys very, very much. You hung in there. Oh, we didn't give them a 5-minute break either. You guys are really brave. Do you have questions?
So the terrifying thing is that you go out there and you find out that what people really want to do isn't what you feel like you can do. Right. And that you don't have a clue where to get the skills to do what needs to be done.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
Better to know it on the front end.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know, but as part of this process, you're going to learn about things that are really important. And chances are really good that you'll be able to pivot your research stream into an area that really does solve a big problem. Or maybe it's the wrong customer segment. Maybe, you know, the value you bring isn't to that person, but is to somebody else. And, you know, so you were talking about the customer being your publication. It's not really. So even if you're a basic scientist, you have a customer. Who is the next person in the translational spectrum that cares about what you do? And what's their job like? How do you make their pain go away, their process better? Can you make sure that someone will pick this up a little bit downstream and carry it forward? But there's still hopefully a customer. That's where the translation comes from. Other questions? Well, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
How big a team does a team need to be
So
for your program?
for the class, we can actually create teams. So students can come in that just want to do it without an idea, and we'll match them up with people to do the idea. However, if you want to go to a national program, you need at least 3. So you need the discovery scientist, you need an entrepreneurial lead, so somebody, you know, that can help with the interviews, and you need an industry mentor. So somebody who's been there, done that, and knows the industry. Which are all things we can help facilitate.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks. So this is a stretch for some people, I think, but we'll see.
Well, this is a huge stretch for our current scientists.
Right.
But, you know, coming back to, can we influence how we teach the next generation? Can this just be part of what they think about going in the first place?
Right.
But no, it is really hard. That's why we keep running around begging people to try and get an SBIR.
Well, and the whole system is not how academics has been set up in the past, because, you know, you get